All right, Barry, let's take a look at rookie ranks. Little dynasty action here. I think no surprise who sits at the top, Bijan Robinson. I think what happens after that is where things are going to get really, really interesting. Your top, take it away.
Well, so the point here is, as you see there in small gray letters, this is for one quarterback dynasty leagues. A lot of dynasty leagues are Superflex, so obviously the rankings would change with Superflex. We'll get to that in a second. But in a one quarterback league, you've got Bijan, then JSN, Jahmyr Gibbs, who we talked about. I have Anthony Richardson at 4. If you want to take Addison and Johnston over him, I could certainly argue that. My argument for Anthony Richardson at 4, even though it's a one quarterback league, it's hard to trade quarterbacks, and quarterbacks is that number one quarterback in fantasy is within the realm of possibility for Anthony Richardson. That's within the range of outcomes. Like he could be Cam Newton and Justin Fields, combined.
Josh Allen-ish.
He could be Josh Allen, exactly right. He could be a guy with that kind of upside with the offensive line, and with Pittman if they add another piece there. So there's definitely a chance that within 3 or 4 years we're talking about Anthony Richardson's number one quarterback in fantasy. And as much as we like Jordan Addison or Quentin Johnson, the fact is like, top 20 wide receiver is likely we're not talking about a Jamar Chase here. We're not talking about a Justin Jefferson here. We're not, we think they're nice players, but so there you go. And then you get into Zay Flowers. We mentioned Dalton Kincaid. It's Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud towards the end of my top 10. All of these ranks will be available on NBCSportsEdge.com, rotoworld.com.
I think one of the really good things is we get to 11 through 20, resurgence at tight end that we've talked about. You saw Kincaid at number 8 there, but Jay, right here, Barry has Michael Mayer at 11. You see Sam Laporta sneaking in there. I mean, three tight ends in the top 20 is just good time for a position that's starving for help.
Yeah, and no offense to him, but the fact that we were talking about Juwan Johnson as a top 10 tight end, and Juwan Johnson, his over-unders for receiving yards was set at 32.5 or whatever. That was the state of the position. So influx of talent. I think some good landing spots as well for Kincaid, for Mayer. Laporta's a little bit crowded, but still it's going to be a really good offense. There's a lot of names here. Again, I don't really see the upside outside of the tight ends, and maybe Charbonnet as well. But obviously he's crowded by Ken Walker too. But of this top 20, I think the big takeaway is that there are only 2 guys who have the realistic ceiling to be, a potential best player in fantasy, and that's Bijan and Anthony Richardson. And Richardson, he might just not be good, and he might just never play, but he also, the athletic talent, people are talking about his ceiling as being, a mix of Josh Allen and Cam Newton, which is just crazy, but he's got those gifts. So he's a guy I think you want to take a flyer
with the rushing floor.
In Detroit, Gibbs could be special.
Yeah,
Gibbs could be special as well behind that offensive line. The one thing I will say here is that I think it's important, and Connor can speak to this as well, but when you're doing dynasty drafts, try to focus much more on talent than opportunity and role. Again, a year ago, people were like, I can't believe Ken Walker went to Seattle. He's got to play behind Rashad Penny. And can't believe Breece Hall's going to New York, and Garrett Wilson. They were both like, who's going to throw to Garrett Wilson? Who's Breece Hall? He's got their bad offensive line. He's going to be splitting time with Michael Carter. They're not going to win any games.
Yep.
Again, and obviously Hall had the tough injury, but the fact is last year at this time, everyone was talking up Drake London and Chris Olave. Olave hit, London didn't. But no one was talking about Garrett Wilson among the first-round rookie wide receivers. No one's talking about Jahan Dotson, who I think looks like a player, absolutely. He had really nice moments for the Commanders last year. And we'll see about Jamison Williams, right? But those are the first-round rookies from last year, and no one talked about Garrett Wilson. Of all of them, he was the guy that got the least amount of talk about, other than maybe Williams because he was injured. And he's the guy you'd want now. He's the guy you'd want right now. So, again, just because no one coming out of college questioned Garrett Wilson's talent. Everyone was just like, that guy's a baller. It's just he's going to the Jets, and who's going to throw him the ball, and blah, blah, blah. So, again, with dynasty rookie ranks, I just always think bet on talent more than role and opportunity, just because that's going to come. Talent wins out. They'll find their way to the field.
So let's take a look at the top 10 for Superflex, which obviously much different landscape, Barry, because of the value at the quarterback position. And I think that much is obvious as you look at 3 in your top 4.
Yeah, obviously Bijan's still number 1, but Richardson, then Bryce Young, then C.J. Stroud again. I think Richardson has the higher ceiling at fantasy than Young or Stroud just because of the rushing. Then you get into JSN, you get into Gibbs at 6. Then we've talked about Addison and Johnson. Zay Flowers comes in at 9. And then Dalton Kincaid at 10. Although if you're in a tight end premium league where you get 1.5 per reception for tight ends, Kincaid would move up for me. He'd move up to number 7 for me, just below Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yep, Connor, one for you. Who's going to have a better fantasy season, Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud?
Ooh, I would take Bryce. I mean, number one, the situations aren't entirely different. I do like Carolina's infrastructure better than where Houston is at offensively. I think Carolina has a deeper offensive line. I know Houston has the premium talent in Laramie Tunsil, but I think Carolina has the deeper offensive line. I think at least a veteran presence in Thielen, where you look at Houston, as we did earlier, and you're scrambling.
Right.
And I believe in Frank Reich. That's a big difference too. Where I like DeMeco Ryans, but DeMeco Ryans is an offensive coach. I don't know how that staff's going to shake out early on. So yeah, I would go with Bryce, and I think there is limited upside for both right away.
I mean, so by the way, you've got a really strong run. Houston has a strong run game too with Pierce, but in Carolina you have Miles Sanders and Chuba Hubbard, both of whom are viable pass catchers. So again, Bryce Young gets in trouble, he can dump off to either one of those guys. Both those guys are good pass catchers. And you mentioned they have DJ Shark. They have Adam Thielen. By the way, we also like Jonathan Mingo.
And they took him early.
So, I mean, that's another guy that we hadn't really got into during this show. But we do think Mingo has a chance to carve out a significant fantasy role for himself over the second half of the year. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and RotoWorld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from RotoWorld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.